show, new theme, all presenters cheeky. I'm Tom Shires.
And I'm Mike Ireland.
And this is the Shires and Ireland Agenda, Episode 1, where it's all about movies and more.
So what are we going to be talking about on this week's show? Well, the headline stories of the film news of the last month, but also a little bit more recently too.
Indeed. And then we go to the world's most awkward quiz in may contain spoilers. Mike has no idea what is coming, and you literally could not prepare for it.
And also, if you're a regular listener to Shires and Ireland, you may be familiar with a certain feature that we used to call Freeview Film of the Week.
But I can't do my voice now. I need to get a new voice.
You can still say it.
Okay.
We're just not calling it. But it's had a rebrand, as all the best things do, and it is now Mike's Big W, for reasons that may become clear, and also Goggletron, for reasons which may not.
And random recommendation.
And random recommendations.
It has too many names.
Can a feature have too many names?
I think so.
We will find out. The listener will tell us.
Absolutely. All that and so much more over the next 40-odd minutes. We just don't know how long the show's going to be.
To the Shires and Ireland Agenda.
It is the Shires and Ireland Agenda on the Shires and Ireland Network and hwdhospitalradio.com. Starting then with the first of the big three whilst we've been off air, and probably the most serious discussion that we're going to have on this programme, maybe even ever, and that is James Gunn. The director dumped a series of historical and tasteless tweets, there's no way to put it, absolutely abhorrent content, and was fired from Guardians of the Galaxy 3 by Disney. Now, interestingly, and surprisingly in my book, the amount of support, particularly from the likes of Chris Pratt and Dave Bautista, saying that that's not the man we know, but a family-friendly corporation like Disney has no choice.
I think you're right in that they had no choice from a business perspective, and to be fair to James Gunn, I think he acknowledged that himself and said that he understood why Disney reached the decision that they did. But at the same time, I do have to think he was someone that was a writer, certainly a comedian at the time that these tweets were made between 2008 and 2011.
Don't come with it's only banter. You can't play the banter card.
Well, no, I'm simply saying if you're a comedian who is a provocative comedian, which is what he was
satire,
what he was trying to be. Maybe. You can still say the jokes he made weren't sufficiently clever, they weren't sufficiently funny, and that doesn't get him off the hook. But I think there has to be some degree of understanding of the context in which the jokes were made, or the remarks were made, and that they were intended to be jokes. Also, the fact that, as I understand it, he had made other comments in the lead up to the release of Guardians of the Galaxy, or that were from before Guardians of the Galaxy but became public in the lead up to the release of Guardians of the Galaxy, and Disney didn't take any action then. So there could be an argument to say, you've dropped him after he's established these characters that nobody expected to be a big successful series and make you a lot of money. Now you can afford to drop him.
And maybe being cynical, if they were in the run-up to the release of a film, was it not in business interests to do the right thing because you would then discredit your product? Whereas at least in the run-up to the production of a new film, if you're going to drop someone, maybe that's the time. Is it almost psychological sacking?
I'm not. I have to say, I think it's an issue where there are differences of opinion, and I think to an extent you have to sort of say, agree to differ on some of it as well, because you can also bring up the fact that some of the people that have brought these comments to light had an agenda for bringing them up that perhaps wasn't entirely selfless, if you want to put it that way, because I think it was people working for a very conservative American news organisation that went and looked for these tweets rather than just finding them accidentally.
And here's another thing then, because there was talk of maybe him coming back to the director's chair for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. The cast and crew are behind him. Disney obviously not in a position to do that. And liking it to another situation, wrestling legend Hulk Hogan, you'll have heard of him.
I'm familiar with Daddy Day. No, what was the one?
Suburban Commando?
Was that where
Mr. Nanny?
Mr. Nanny is
Mr. Nanny. He also did Three Ninjas on Mega Mountain, or one of the Three Ninjas films. That's by the by.
Yeah, I think it is.
But can people change? Because Hulk Hogan was recorded making a racist slur. His defence, which I'm not sure you can really play, but he did, was that one racist comment does not make me a racist. That's perhaps another debate. He was stricken from the WWE Hall of Fame. He lost his ambassadorial role. Merchandise was cut. He was basically just erased from history. He has since now apologised to the locker room and is now back in the Hall of Fame and will be returning probably to television and the likes soon. Now, is there such thing as forgiveness in 2018? Can one make a genuine mistake, albeit public and tasteless, and be redeemed? Or is it a case of once a alleged racist or once an alleged sayer of these kind of things, offensive things, are you done?
I don't think you can be. I think you have to accept that when you look at things that have been said or actions that have been taken in the round and put it into a context, you have to accept that, yes, that was the context in which it took place, and also individuals can change. I think you have to accept both those things, and it's always going to be on a case-by-case basis, I suppose. That's the bit that makes things like this especially difficult, because we can forgive X for doing Y, but we can't forgive M for N.
I like your algebraic approach. That's very good. Is it naivety then, just bringing it full circle back to Gunn, is it naivety on the part of the cast and crew to say, that's not the man I know, that's not James Gunn, that's not what he's really about? Because do you ever know what someone's really about?
I don't know what you're about. You want to end it there? No. I think that's all that someone can say, can't they? That you only work with the person you work with. You don't know what they're like the rest of the time.
Absolutely. So the lesson for all of us really is that online's forever, and it's public. And I guess don't make a statement that you're not willing to stand by.
Does that mean this is the first and last Shires and Islands agenda?
Thank you and good night.
Mrs. Agenda, are you trying to seduce me?
Listening to the Shires and Islands agenda. The other really big talking point as regards movie, I don't know whether it's news or it's definitely news. It's not. Well, it's the announcement of something that is now not happening, which maybe that's going to be a bit of a theme.
Does one negate the other? It doesn't exist, does it?
You're saying
it was going to happen. Now it's not just.
It's like Schrodinger's Oscar award. Announced back in August there was going to be a new category, officially Outstanding Achievement in Popular Film. I think most popular film was the way a lot of people were talking about it. It was going to be awarded to movies that were popular with the public and made a lot of moolah, but were not especially popular with the film critics, and was supposed to be launched in next year's 91st Oscars, which are being held in February, as is traditional. But the Academy said at the time the further details were going to be forthcoming, and that the intention was to make the awards more relevant, and formed part of a series of measures that were being introduced to attract viewers to a ceremony that has been losing viewers in a quite substantial way over recent years. However, it's then been announced at the start of September that there's going to be further discussion, and it's now not going to be held next year. May well come in at a later date, or it may be scrapped altogether. Is this just a cynical attempt on the part of the Academy, who are a money-making racket, that they wanted viewers, therefore they wanted advertising, therefore they needed more viewers, therefore let's have an award that's going to reward popular films, whereas we can keep our highbrow best picture to ourselves?
My problem with the whole idea is that the winner of that Oscar, had it gone ahead, it's effectively a pity Oscar, isn't it? It's basically, you're not highbrow enough, or you're not clever enough, or you're not creative enough, per se, to have the best picture, not to even be nominated for that. But, these are fun films. But I put this to you. Case in point, perhaps, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. What differentiates that fantasy film from Star Wars The Last Jedi or Black Panther?
It was good. No, and the Oscars proved it. I think I find the idea of having a most popular film Oscar a difficult a difficult sell either way, because you're basically saying that this is the award that we're giving out to the film that has made the most money. The most bums on seats have granted an award to this particular movie. And I can understand why artists wouldn't like receiving that. But at the same time, I can also think, well, does that mean films that are unpopular are the only ones that are going to win Best Picture now? And what would it make you think if you were a director or an actor that was receiving an award for Best Picture, and that means people don't actually like me that much?
Maybe. And then this is the whole idea. You imagine the ceremony. If it's an idea of viewership and getting people to watch the programme, are they going to stick it right at the end? As in, if you were never interested in the Oscars anyway, you wouldn't sit through 2.5 hours of it to then get to the one that you were interested in. That's what YouTube's for, isn't it?
Yeah, also, do fans watch the Oscars in that sort of a way?
Oscar parties, are they a thing?
They're a thing, but it's not. You're not like a football fan. You're not going into the awards thinking, "Oh, I really hope my film comes out on top of this." Surely you're just waiting to see the next day or online. Oh, so and so's one. Oh, great! I'm really pleased, but I've already seen the film, so in a way, I'm the one that's got the good thing out of this.
Yeah, I'm all for a highlights package.
Okay.
Not a euphemism. Thank you very much. So no, in a sense, I think it's sad that it's not going to happen, but hopefully it might then enable at some point the realisation and the Academy to recognise that popular films do have more to offer. But we'll have to just wait and see.
Is this just the latest attempt of the Oscars trying to become the TV Quicks of the movie industry?
Maybe. We would go on to our third item of Big Three, but that old news has become new news on account of something that has happened actually today. I'm not going to tell you what day, you'll be able to work it out if you're very, very clever.
Oh, yes, I suppose.
Or if you want a calendar.
Yeah, I was about to say.
You might not have to be clever, just you can do numbers and boxes.
I had trouble with that earlier on today, but we may all go into that later on.
It's round, it's purple, it shows you what to view. It's Mike's Big W.
So yes, it used to be Freeview Film of the Week.
Still can be if you want.
Do the voice.
Freeview Film of the Week.
But now it is Mike's Big W. And should we give a bit of an explanation of why it is Mike's Big W?
I think, yeah, for legal reasons and decency, we need to explain what Mike's Big W is right now, but we only do it once. So if you miss this one, you probably just think that we're weird or pervy, but it's not.
Okay, what it is I used to get, and still do get, a TV guide every week.
Paper TV guides?
They do exist, yeah. And it became a habit. I did it over Christmas initially, but I've started doing it every single week, of putting a W next to the television programmes I wanted to watch with a big felt tip pen.
Now, am I right or am I wrong that the colour of the W has changed over time?
It has changed many times over the years. I think I'm right in saying it started out being red, then it moved on to purple, then yellow, blue, green, and we are now on, if memory serves, pink.
All right, it's a good colour.
It is. It is simply the case that after a while the felt tip pen runs out.
Oh, I see. Recommendations?
Yes. So, by the way, the W stand. In case you're wondering what the W stood for, originally it was watching. Now, because I do it for radio as well, it is worth paying attention to.
Oh, I like it. Lengthier, but I like it.
Okay. So
we can't do Mike's lengthier, Big W. That just becomes a whole other beast. Mike, please stop me from talking. Talk movies.
So I go through the films that are going to be on over the course of the next 7 days to provide some sort of random recommendations. In a way, it's as though the TV schedulers are the ones offering up the films that we then recommend to you, the listener. First off, a film that I haven't actually seen, but I think I'm right in saying you have.
Here we go.
Gods of Egypt.
No.
I thought you were...
I've seen Exodus, Gods and Kings.
That might be what I'm confusing.
But Gods of Egypt is a poor man's... If it's Prince of Egypt at the top of the tree, and then you've got kind of Exodus, Gods and Kings. I know it's not kind of a Moses story, but it's down there, isn't it? It's down at the sandals, if we're talking sword and sandals.
Yeah, it was an attempt to start, we may well get onto, a film franchises that failed to get going. But Gods of Egypt was supposed to be starting off a sort of slew of Clash and Wrath of Titans-esque Egyptian mythology
brilliant.
films. You're feeling well. And really didn't catch on the Alex Proteus 2016 effort. But when you think about the cast, Nikolai Coster-Waldau, of course, of Game of Thrones fame, Gerard Butler, Brenton Thwaites.
The Phantom of the Opera?
The Phantom of the Opera.
Himself?
Yeah. Brenton Thwaites, who is in the new DC streaming Titans series as Robin, telling Batman to...
Go away.
Go away.
Go away, you Batman.
Chadwick Boseman, of course, you know from Black Panther. Elodie Young, who's in Daredevil on... It's the Netflix one?
It is Netflix... Is it Netflix original?
Yes, it is.
It started out there, didn't it? Yeah.
Rufus Sewell and Geoffrey Rush. So again, quality cast, abnormally poor film. And I still think it's one of those ones that's maybe that bad that it's actually interesting to watch at least the once. A couple of great children's films, although both appreciated by adults as well, it has to be said. Despicable Me and the Lego Movie on Sunday.
We'll look forward to is it the second part? Is that what they call it? Lego Movie, the second part?
Yes, it is. And I don't know, is it just going to be more of the same?
That wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, but...
The way, can we say that the Lego Movie breaks the fourth Lego wall?
Absolutely, it does, into very, very tiny pieces.
So does that make it difficult to do a second film?
I don't think so, because they've opened up the idea that the various Lego kingdoms, if you will, or the different sets all exist. So there could be kind of in-world film, rather than having to rely on someone to go out and buy all the toys and then assemble them and then have the film happen. But I'm just worried because Lego Batman movie for me wasn't very good. Ninjago came and went without much fanfare at all, so hopefully they bring their A game for the second part.
Okay, moving on to Fruitvale Station, Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan's original team-up film, in effect, where they worked together for the first time as director and star. Of course, later went on to make Creed and Black Panther. And I think I'm right in saying it tells the story of a young man in the day leading up to his death in Los Angeles, shot by the police. So it is a searing drama and of a very different style to Lego Movie and Despicable Me, unsurprisingly. Moving on to a couple of more 1990s action films, Enemy of the State and Con Air.
Yes.
Now,
put the bunny back in the box.
I have a thing for Enemy of the State, but I have to agree that in terms of
nice shopping bags in Enemy of the State. Do you remember?
I don't remember. What?
Towards the start of the film, he's in kind of some kind of exclusive. I don't know, it's like a technology shop or whatever, and they have lovely gift bags. That's my lasting memory of Will Smith being deleted.
Because of course he didn't want to get on the. What was it? Was it on the network? Was that the expression that was used in the film? On the grid.
On the net.
He didn't want to
it wasn't on the net, was it?
No, that was the Sandra Bullock film.
Oh.
So yes, they're both on this week and well worth looking out for. Back when Nicolas Cage
had hair? No, I don't think he had hair then, did he?
Was that at the sort of start of Nicolas Cage as action star?
Yeah, because you get that. Is it about 97? Is it?
97. Yeah,
97. Face Off is 99, 2000, somewhere around there. The Rock's 99, is it?
Yeah. So
it's a decent trilogy if they were back to back, man.
Yeah. And I will also quickly mention that When Eagles Dare is on, which is a great 1968 thriller with Richard Burton and Clint Eastwood, a pair that you wouldn't think would work well together, but really do, in a sort of Second World War sort of spy adventure story, and loads of great alpine shots in that one.
Music by Ron Goodwin.
Britain's own Ron Goodwin. Yeah. But our Freeview film of the week, as would have been, is now
Mike's Big W recommendation, Random Goggletron.
Yeah, I think so. We may well get on to explaining why it's called Goggletron later on in the year. But we're going for The Black Shield of Falworth.
The what?
The Black Shield of Falworth. Yeah, it's...
sounds like one of your books. Is Falworth in your Elliam?
It really isn't, no. It's a 1954 Rudolph Mate Hollywood... it's supposed to be a sort of swashbuckler starring Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh.
Please, no names.
Yes, very much.
Does he do the voice?
He doesn't do the voice. There is a famous, I think, apocryphal story. What's... Debbie Reynolds, yeah.
What's Debbie Reynolds' name?
I was thinking of what's Carrie Fisher's mother's name, but then I realised it was Debbie Reynolds. She apparently came up with this story that Tony Curtis used a exaggerated accent, an exaggerated Brooklyn accent, I think it was, to say, "Yonder lies the castle of my father," when he's supposed to be a medieval English peasant. And
it's almost Singing the Rain style of, and I can't steal him.
Yeah, it is a little bit like that. But yeah, he and Janet Leigh actually married in real life and played brother and sister in this. And they are two children, well, young people from a noble family who've fallen on hard times and have had to go into hiding during a civil war, and he ends up getting trained as a man-at-arms in the castle that once belonged to his father, and has to try and avenge his father and also stop a plot against the king.
Is it fun?
Oh, it's very fun and very silly. It's very sort of frivolous, but I really quite enjoyed it.
You played a Peaky Blinder all night, Mike. Are you ready for the final round?
Hit me with your question stick. Hit me.
For tonight's grand prize, a 100% unofficial Shires and Armed pin badge. The category is brand. James Brand. I have rebranded Bond film titles to give them that true action thriller feel.
Oh my lord.
You have 2 minutes on the clock to tell me what the actual films are called. You win if I say you win.
Oh great, I love arbitrary competitions.
And this round may contain spoilers. Are you ready to begin?
I suppose so.
Begin! James Bond in Allergies Can Kill.
On Her Majesty's Secret Service, I think.
James Bond in Space.
Is that Moonraker?
James Bond in Voodoo Drug Party.
I'm going to guess that Live and Let Die.
James Bond in Opportunity Knocks.
Casino Royale, maybe, because it's in the...
Knocks with an X.
Oh, with an X. Oh, right.
That's why I was doing the hands.
Goldfinger, okay.
Goldfinger! James Bond in Flood Bomb.
Oh, is that Beautiful Kill? Beautiful Kill.
James Bond Goes Home.
Skyfall.
James Bond in A Million Reasons to Kill.
Die Another Day? What?
One golden shot.
Oh, well, very good. I'm going to guess it's Man with the Golden Gun.
James Bond in Wet and Wild.
Thunderball. No, never say never again. Are we going Eon?
James Bond in Nothing to Declare.
Nothing. I think that was an American sitcom. Nothing to do. I don't know. I'm struggling with that.
They have nothing to declare except the cello.
Oh, okay. Living Daylights. Very good.
James Bond in Prisoner Exchange.
Die Another Day.
James Bond in Laserface.
I'm not sure. What would that be?
In the film, faces are definitely changed, and it's all about laser from
Face
space.
Where
is he? Where is Ernst Stavro Blofeld?
Diamonds Are Forever. Wow.
James Bond in Decode Da.
No, I don't know.
Decode Da.
Decode. You're saying it over again.
It's decoder with the Russian for yes on the end. Decode Da.
GoldenEye.
Russian. To be fair,
from Russia with Love.
Perhaps it is. James Bond in C. That's SEA. See No Evil.
I'm running out of Bond films.
Clang, clang, a lang, a lang, a lang, a lang, a lang.
Spy Who Loved Me.
James Bond in Clown Killer.
Octopussy.
James Bond is Agent Ninja.
You Only Live Twice.
James Bond in Stacked Deck.
Casino Royale.
James Bond in Stacked Deck 2.
Quantum of Solace.
James Bond
It's my
in
favourite.
Secret Jamaica.
Doctor No.
James Bond in Aquatic Attack.
I don't.
AT-AC Attack. Aquatic Attack.
Roger Moore in Eyes. If Your Eyes Only.
James Bond in Coke Pain.
License to Kill.
James Bond in Monetary Meltdown.
Is that GoldenEye?
James Bond in Stockholm Syndrome.
World Is Not Enough.
James Bond in A Bond Family Reunion.
I'm guessing Spectre.
James Bond in Bad News Day.
The best Bond film of all time, Tomorrow Never Dies.
Mike Island, you are the winner. The Shires Now on Agenda, Episode 1. Tom Shires, Mike Island. It is the Shires Now on the Network and hwdhospitalradio.com. Obviously, so much streaming out there, legal and illegal, but we focus on the stuff that you pay for legally. Amazon Prime, Netflix are the two big names, soon to be joined by a revamped Disney service. They currently have Disney Life, which is very much family-friendly. It's all the Disney princess stuff with songbooks and other content. But soon to be revamped as Disney Play, which will also bring Marvel and Star Wars into the fray. But also DC Universe. Do people have enough money to go around? Because these are feasibly, if the content was right, two things I probably would be interested in. But I already have Amazon Prime. I'm already a Now TV streamer as well. Which one do you go for? If you had to buy one, which one's it going to be?
I'm probably going to go Disney.
All right,
Probably.
just because of variety?
I suppose so, yeah. And I think I'm more likely to rewatch something that I've seen from Disney rather than just watch it the once if it's on Netflix or something like that. I do think this is just the way the industry is going, and by the industry I basically mean media in general. I think the problem is going to be how many of these different services can you ultimately subscribe to, because I know that in the United States you've got, I think, ABC with Star Trek Discovery.
Yes.
That was available on a...
Hulu's a thing as well.
Yes,
Hulu's big.
That was a streaming service. So when channels start to have their own pay-per-view streaming services, or subscription, I should say, streaming services, you're just going to have such a great plethora of them that I don't know how people are going to have the wherewithal to sign up to everything that they wanted. Are we coming to the end of what was a golden age of Are we coming into the end of what is a golden age of communal television? I don't want to get too heavy, but is this a big societal change? That
everyone's watching something different, and the idea of everyone's watching BBC One on Saturday night, where it just goes away because everything's segmented and different.
Maybe the only things that will exist are things. The only things that will exist is, I don't like the term water cooler because I actually mean it in an almost deeper way than that, and not deeper water. But
you'd have trouble drowning in a water cooler. You'd have to put it on your head for a start, and that hole. We've got one in here, but that hole is small.
But my point is, would big event television still be something that would grab people and get them together? Something that was live. So I don't watch Strictly Come Dancing, but it gets that big a view.
Well, I pay £12.12 a month for it, so it might as well be a Netflix subscription.
Yeah, that's an argument. But that is a show that if you don't watch it live on the night, you're not really part of the experience. So therefore, there will still be a place for those things, and they will still be on television channels.
And sport, surely, as well, is...
Well, you say that, but then I think the likes of Facebook and Amazon are starting to consider bidding for, and YouTube bidding for rights for sports series. I mean...
already happened.
Amazon's already happened with the US
Open. We had it in our household, and Mrs. Shires was thrilled at that. Bob Iger has said that the Disney service will certainly undercut Netflix. Now, Netflix has various price bands anyway, so they haven't been very clear on which of those it will come in at. But an interesting aside from this week, Sky TV have announced that they are integrating Netflix as part of their Sky Q subscriptions. Oh. So if you search on your Sky box for a Sky show, but you also have the option, it will search Netflix at the same time. I think Virgin Media have already been doing a similar thing where you can have Netflix as part of your subscription, but I'm not sure whether it's integrated or whether you have to effectively open the Netflix app. But that's quite an exciting thing for people who want the best of both worlds.
What do you think, therefore, about things like new Star Wars TV series. I say TV in air quotes almost now, because it's in all probability going to be a streaming series, and the Marvel series, and now DC, although that's removed from the film universe that already exists. But what do you think about those series being put on the streaming series? So, does it almost create two different level of fans?
I think so, because I think DC Universe particularly, I think only a very certain type of person is going to put their money on that. I mean, it's already launched in the US. You can get it for $75 a year or $7.99 a month if you want to do it that way, which, to be fair, isn't a lot of money. Yeah. But if you're like me, I'm not a hardcore DC fan, but I have Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series. I've got all the films. I'm not interested in Robin swearing at me.
I was just about to say, if you're not a hardcore DC fan, you're probably not. If you are a hardcore DC fan, Robin swearing is probably the one thing you do want.
Yeah, and I haven't kept up with the likes of Arrow, Flash, Legends of Tomorrow. So the idea of more of that content doesn't grab me. Whereas if you say Jon Favreau's very high budget Star Wars TV in air quotes series is going to be exclusive to that, new episodes of the Clone Wars, maybe Star Wars Rebels to return at some point, Star Wars Resistance. I just think there's more value for money there.
Because it's a Disney one rather than being a Star Wars streaming service. Yeah. That's the point. You're getting Star Wars as part of something larger.
I can have my heroes, my superheroes, I can have my Force wielders, and I can have Tinkerbell all at the same time.
But basically, I thought Tinkerbell is a Force user, isn't she?
I don't know. Is magic and the Force, they're the same thing?
Well, we don't. I'm sort of saying we don't know that she's not using the Force. Have we seen her project?
Not yet. Spoiler alert, perhaps. No, I'm sure you've seen it already. But no, just curious as to, let's say, how much money there is to go around. Disney Play would have my money. Are you interested at all by a rotating comics library? Does that grab you for DC Universe?
To be honest, when it comes to comics, I think I prefer actually reading the physical rather than reading a screen. I don't mind...
but it sometimes makes that noise, and it's even animated to make it look like a page is turning over.
Yeah, I don't know what the facility is called, but I know it's got a facility that's supposed to draw your attention to particular parts of the
you can
page.
tap on a frame or a panel and it expands, which is useful, I guess.
But I think I just like the physical copy, although I have read books online and haven't had any issue with it, but I think when it's comics, I actually just like the feeling of page.
He's a tangible kind of guy, literally and metaphorically. So Disney Play and DC Universe yet to launch here in the UK, but I'm sure we'll probably have another conversation very much like this when they do.
This agenda is impressive. Most impressive.
You're listening to the Shires and Ireland Agenda. It's still the Shires and Ireland Agenda. I'm still Tom Shires. He's very much still Mike Ireland. Something a little bit different that we never did on the former show At the Movies is to talk music. Now, this won't happen too often because I'm not really a new music kind of guy. But when I am a new music kind of guy, it's really old people singing that I'm into. So if Noel Gallagher knocks out a new album, Liam's I did actually pay attention to, but Paul McCartney, I'm a sucker for anything former Beatle, and he's had his first Billboard #1 album in 37 years with Egypt Station, the new LP.
What was the last one?
Let's do the maths. 37. That must be somewhere around 1980.
Okay.
So what would that have been? Maybe it would have been McCartney too. Maybe like Tug of War or something kind of.
There wasn't a whole album with Stevie Wonder, was there?
No. So that was mostly Tug of War and maybe a little bit on Pipes of Peace. Okay. So definitely the early 80s output. So he made a painting in the 80s, as it happens, called Egypt Station, which inspires a concept album. And we're going to have this conversation now. I'm going to put it to you, Mike Ireland. Going back to 1967, I believe. Is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band a concept album?
I think it probably is, but a very loose one. If it's the first concept album, you kind of get the feeling that they didn't really know that they were making something like a concept album.
All right.
I think was it John that was talking about it and basically said it was a way to explore some sorts of music that we wouldn't previously have felt comfortable exploring. And so to give ourselves a persona was a way of doing that.
Yeah, there's all these ideas about it being escapism for the band. And John Lennon definitely said that there was no real theme running through it. It worked because we said it worked. So you have obviously the
That's
powerful,
kind of like this show.
Yeah, you have the powerful image of the album cover. You have the start of the concert with Pepper into with a little help from my friends. You have the reprise at the end. But I think it was John Lennon who also said that any other of those songs could have appeared on any other Beatles album around that time, because there is no common thread. You kind of have the mental image of the acts coming on stage, but it's not a thing.
In a way, because it opens the album, it opens out your idea of what the album could be, which therefore, as we say, lets them explore and lets them do what they want.
Yeah, and we as listeners just fill in the gaps.
Yes.
So the idea then to bring it to Egypt Station, of that being a concept album, is very much the same thing. There are 2 instrumentals called Opening Station 1 and 2, which are basically just station noise with some kind of choir R's and some plinky plonk things. Other than that, there's no story, there's no thread. It's just a series of, as it happens, really quite good songs.
I'm sure we're pleased. So, given that the album is named after a painting that he did way back when, has he had the idea for some of these songs for a long time, rattling around in there? Or are they all very much new composition? I
think they are all new material. But saying that, when this album is at its worst, and we'll start there, it sounds like the very worst of 1980s Paul McCartney. There's an album called McCartney 2, and you get the feeling that Linda bought him a Bon Tempi and said, "Go on, Paul, knock yourself out." And there are a couple of highlights on it, and there's another album called Press that has a couple of highlights on it, but the rest of it just feels like a bit of a vanity project, or something that probably should have stayed in the studio and then been released on an anthology in a number of years' time. There's a track on Egypt Station called Back in Brazil that screams 1980s Paul McCartney in the worst possible way.
Frog chorus.
Yeah. Oh no, it's worse than that. Now, as an instrumental, it would have been fine. So if I block out the vocals, fine, cool. It's kind of like a kind of synthy disco salsa type thing. At its best, I kid you not, some of these songs could have been on the White Album.
Okay.
And I'm not one to praise Paul McCartney when he doesn't deserve it, because his voice is tired. We can get that one out there right now. But the man can still write a song, and he doesn't shy away from melody. I listen to so much music nowadays that just, where's the arc, where's the flow, where are the highs and lows? And there are some really, really beautiful moments on this LP.
Okay, so if you're proportioning it, how much is the Bon Tempi Paul McCartney and how much is the Beautiful Melody Paul McCartney?
All right, not so much. I mean, Back in Brazil must be about 5 or 6 minutes, and that's definitely a low point. I would genuinely say there's a 70-30 ratio from great to don't bother.
And do you think it is accessible? I don't just mean you can stream this.
Yeah, buy it in the shops.
No, I mean, is this going to convince people that don't usually listen to Paul McCartney albums or have got an idea of Paul McCartney as sort of stuck in aspic or frozen carbonite? Is this something that people will go, actually, this is something that I would try?
To use this parlance, I'm not sure it's going to convert anybody to the Church of Paul McCartney. That being said, casual fans who maybe have dipped in and out, I think will certainly dip back in. I've got everything he's ever done, and I think it certainly ranks highly up there. But I just think you never stop being a Beatle. It annoys me. Former Beatle Paul McCartney, it's like you never stop being a Beatle. Does he need to make new music? No, he doesn't. But he wants to, because let's face it, that's all he's ever known.
Are Kanye and Rihanna on this album?
They're not, but he does knock out 4 or 5 seconds live quite often, strangely. So I just want to give you a few recommendations before we move along. You'll know the singles Come On To Me, that's the kind of stomping rocker, and I Don't Know, which might be the best piano ballad of 2018. Not that there are many of them, I don't think. And For You, which I don't listen to because it alludes to a naughty word. It's an interesting play on words, but it's a very painful 3 minutes anyway. Let me just give you another 2 have-to listens on there. There's a song called Dominoes that's probably the most White Album thing on the entire record, that just has beautiful kind of harpsichord and all stuff going off that's brilliant. But the highlight, and Paul McCartney excels at this even now, is a song called Despite Repeated Warnings. Now, imagine Abbey Road, last 20 odd minutes, it's probably not even that long, it just seems grander and more epic. Is the medley, isn't it? Where one song segs into another. Despite Repeated Warning starts out as a kind of haunting piano ballad that becomes a kind of the middle of the day in the life-esque. I think the comparisons are a little bit too rich and generous. It kind of rocks out in the middle, and then it blends that rocking bit with the piano ballad bit from the start. And it's all about a captain and his crew are telling him to turn around, but he keeps pushing forward. And I think it very much is a Trump protest song about how we're going to stop this plan going through, and eventually there's a mutiny on board the ship. So he's still got things to say.
Yes. Perfectly valid. Are there any videos released? Is there any sort of emotional stuff?
Yeah, there's kind of graphic videos, and I mean graphic in the sense of artwork.
Robin story.
But there is definitely a music video for You, because that was meant to be the kind of commercial single, despite the fact that Paul McCartney needs to stop worrying about that.
Yeah.
It's not you've had your success, but it's like you've got a number one album. You don't need to worry about number one singles and the like. Just write great songs, because he can still do it.
Can I ask, who is it that is producing the album?
Off the top of my head, completely forgotten.
No, because I was going to say, I did read one review that sort of pointed out that they felt that Paul McCartney had got a proper relationship with the producer, and that it was the first time Paul McCartney had a relationship with a producer and someone who, in effect, was prepared to stand up to him a bit, since he worked with Elvis Costello.
Yeah, I think that's the dangerous thing. There's loads of articles this week that have said that who can tell the guy who wrote Eleanor Rigby what's good and what's not? And that must be a great challenge when they're in the studio. I know For You was produced by someone different. I think there's maybe two producers on the entire record. But it doesn't have to be contemporary, because this guy invented contemporary music. So don't worry about hanging out with the coolest and the brightest. Just do what you do.
Ray, when someone asks you if you listen to the agenda, you say yes!
You're listening to the Shires and Island Agenda.
So this is our first Shires and Island Agenda edition, obviously following on from At the Movies. But I thought, well, why don't we look at first films in franchises? For the purposes of this, I've decided a franchise is a film series that consists of 3 or more films. If you've only got 2, that's just not it. That's just not good enough.
And do they have to be direct sequels? For example, is Ghostbusters a franchise? Because you have 2 films that belong together and then one that should never have been made. And that's not being sexist.
According to some. It's going to be our first and last edition of Shires and Islands Agenda. I think that's something to talk about, actually. And where is a first film in a series sufficient in and of its own right to ultimately merit a remake? Because, I mean, you've said you don't watch Fellowship of the Ring.
No, because it's
unnecessary.
It's
once you've seen it, you feel you know the establishing stuff. Therefore, why watch the shit?
And shockingly, I take a similar approach with Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope, which at the time I know was felt to be a very quick film, in the sense of it didn't stop and explain things. It just assumed that you knew what a speeder was, or you knew what a hyperdrive was, and it was bang, 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 bang. I watch it now, though, and find it really quite slow. I just think, let's just get on Hoth already.
You just want to jump ahead. But I think first films in series are interesting simply because there are so many different types of first film. Is it a finite story that you're telling, so you're always going to adapt it over a series of parts? Case in point, The Hunger Games. First film was obviously going to lead into a second and a third. That was the entire plan all along. Same with the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the like. If you're doing Dr. No as the first James Bond film, I think that kind of establishes the idea of first films in series where really they're a man on a mission film. They're a protagonist-driven film, and it's simply the protagonist's story that is told again and again and again and again. So that's a different type of first film in a series. Is something, if you're opening a saga like Star Wars, you need to establish that there is a wider world out there and that there is a backstory. Do you need to have it be open-ended at all?
I don't know, because you could argue that, say, A New Hope is quite insular, really, in its scope.
Yes, because
it takes a very large conflict but zooms in on something very small and personal.
But at the same time,
you're aware of what's going on.
You're aware of what's going on. And by the end of the film, there will be spoilers for all these first films, by the way. The Empire hasn't fallen at the end of New Hope. But if there was never another Star Wars film, you could go away thinking, well, the Empire was probably going to fall after that.
Yeah, or maybe because the Death Star, spoiler alert, is destroyed. Yes, maybe that's the end of the Empire. Yes. You could feasibly jump to that conclusion, didn't you? But
because it wasn't the end of the series, we sort of look at Episode 4 in a different way now. For one thing, they went back and renamed it Episode 4. It was simply Star Wars when it was first in cinemas, so I think that makes it slightly different. you also get first films in a series where the reaction to the first film is to make a completely different type of film. I always think of the best example being Alien and Aliens. Alien is a sci-fi horror.
Yeah.
Aliens is a sci-fi war film, sci-fi action film, and they're two brilliant films of very different types.
The rationale there was it that basically you couldn't outdo the first one on account of its content, so why try and do the same thing again? And I respect that about a sequel. I would say the same about Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. I think they are three very different films. Maybe not necessarily tonally, but just kind of narratively, I guess. And I like the variety of the fact that you can watch the trilogy and not feel that you're watching the same film 3 times.
Yeah. Do you think superhero films are slightly a category in and of themselves? The reason I say that is because a superhero film is, even with the Marvel films, it's an adaptation of something from a different genre, but it very rarely directly adapts a story from that genre. It is basically a story about the title character. So therefore, it has got more in common with a James Bond film. And that's sort of why when you watch Tim Burton's Batman, it is much more of a 1980s action film in many ways than it is a superhero film.
Yeah, no, I take your point.
So you're comparing and contrasting different things. Batman has more in common with Dr. No than Batman does with Episode 4.
Yeah, and then we get spoiled with films like, say, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which is effectively a techno thriller, or Ant-Man, which is a family comedy heist film. I think that the beauty that can be done and bring such variety to the universe means that, well, people keep going.
What about comedies? If you look at the first film in a comedy series, it is almost invariably the best film in a comedy series.
Can we think of a comedy sequel that's better?
You seem to like... Well, it depends whether you class it as a comedy or not. Beverly Hills Cop.
Oh, I see, but...
You like 3 better than 1.
But I think I know in my heart of hearts that it's not the best film. But I just connect with... is it Uncle Bill? What's it called? The Wonder World.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right, yeah.
Uncle Dave. It's Uncle Dave.
It's Uncle Dave, okay.
Yeah, someone shot Uncle Dave.
So... Why do you think? Is it because? And I wondered.
The joke gets old, doesn't it? Literally.
Yeah, I was about to. Does it become more caricature? The further you go on with the comedy series, it becomes more caricature. Almost in the way the Carry On films became even broader and more caricatured, and also they become more, in the same way, sitcomified.
Yeah, I think the danger is as well that developing characters, because if they start out as caricatures and they have their own individual ways and idiosyncrasies and they fall over a lot, or they always fall into the cake, or whatever it is. How many times can you do that before that becomes very, very stale? I don't think there's much you can do. There's not much of an arc, I don't think, with a comedic character. Whereas if you take, for example, we've seen it with Thor the other way around, where he starts off as a very kind of stoic, almost Shakespearean character, and has then almost morphed over time into this kind of space buddy type thing, and still works. So I just think when it comes to comedy, it's all about making people laugh, and that's it. Whereas other genres have the kind of multifaceted approach where, it's about action, it's about family, it's about laughs, it's about effects.
Whereas comedy is almost always just about the one aspect.
Yeah, and that's the joke, and you say the joke can't last forever.
What about horror? I think horror is, again, different because horror films, the first film in the series, might end on a scare about the villain isn't actually dead or whatever it might be. But really, that's not setting up a sequel. That's not really setting up a sequel so much as it is just supposed to be an extra scare at the end of the film.
Yeah, the kind of lingering thought of, or he or it is still out there.
And again, there aren't many horror sequels that are thought of as being better than their original.
No, I think of my knowledge of kind of Scream, Nightmare on Elm Street, the reboots tend to fare okay. I mean, I know the upcoming reboot of Halloween, which is a kind of a pseudo soft reboot sequel type thing, is getting rave reviews. But generally, I think you're right that how many times can you see someone jump out at someone, or someone hacked to bits, or promiscuous teenagers get what's coming to them in inverted commas before it becomes old. So I think you have to put horror in a similar category to comedy, in that you can't really string that out to 7 films, unless of course you're the Police Academy.
Well, no, it's weird because when we sort of say hints at a larger world that can then be explored, horror films quite often have that, because whoever the villain, whatever the macabre force that is persecuting people, there will be hints throughout the course of the film as to what caused that. And of course that's why you get, is it the Insidious films where they've now spun off, and I think The Nun is the forthcoming one, they're looking into the origins. So it is an obvious line to go down in the future, but sort of the point about horror and some of the scary parts of horror are
the unknown.
The unknown.
And that's my issue, because by the time you get, for example, Halloween 4, because I've seen most of those, it then became this idea of Michael Myers in the first film is just a very, very disturbed kid who does something very, very wrong, is then incarcerated, escapes on Halloween night, and continues where he left off. That is almost a real-world scenario, potentially, of someone who is just that amoral and mentally ill. Whereas by the time you get to the fourth film, Michael Myers suddenly has a constellation tattoo on one of his hands, which is the constellation that appears in the sky on Halloween. I kid you not, I'm not making this up. Appears in the sky on Halloween, and therefore it's almost some kind of astrological reason as to why he is the way that he is.
Okay.
And we could even, go down the Star Wars route of explaining who Darth Vader is. Surely you just want a scary guy in a mask, whereas suddenly when he's, the little cute boy, or he's not in control, it's the stars that are making him do it, the mystique is gone. And the films are ruined for me after that point.
So, if you had to pick the best first film in a series, where if you took the rest of the films away, that would be the one. So I can't. I always say I can't subtract Fellowship of the Ring. I can't take the Lord of the Rings.
You see them as one film.
I see them as one film,
story.
so I can't. In the same way, I don't think I could do The Godfather and not think of The Godfather Part 2.
I was thinking Toy Story, but actually I think 2 and 3 are stronger in a big way.
Well, Toy Story would be one of my contenders.
Really?
I do think trilogy, pound for pound, because I don't consider Lord of the Rings a trilogy. I think it's the best film trilogy. Because I think each episode is individual and in and of its own merits is equally good. However, my pick for best first film in a series, and it is all based on the protagonist, so it's just the same protagonist in the series of films, Die Hard.
Die Hard. No, it's a good shout.
They're just professionals doing a job.
You're listening to the Shires and Ireland Agenda. Shires and Ireland Agenda, and we said earlier on that some of our old news had become new news, so that's where we're going to go now as we finish with this week's Big Three. The old news was, of course, Danny Boyle's departure as director of Bond 25, apparently over the casting of a certain Thomas Cott. Now, was that he wanted him and couldn't have him, or he had him and didn't want him?
I'm under the impression that he was the one that wanted Cott, and the producers did not.
Producers, including Daniel Craig, apparently, who has his hands in all casting decisions.
Yes, which once you
executive producer Daniel Craig.
Well, yeah, maybe we don't. I don't think he's going to be an executive producer, but maybe that wasn't one of the things he agreed when he decided to come back for a fifth and final film.
All right. So cited creative differences, which is that just about the casting?
No, the rumours are also that he was interested in making it more heavily involving a Russian villain. And I suppose this is something that is a slightly separate discussion, but we might as well just quickly touch on it. Do you think the Bond films should reflect current geopolitical trends?
I think it worked for Spooks, and if it worked for Spooks, that's good enough for James Bond.
That's the rule you live by.
Rule of thumb.
But because it is interesting when you look back at the 60s and 70s ones, and then the 80s as well, did reference the Cold War, obviously, but how often was it in the series that Bond and MI6 went into the investigation thinking that the enemies were the Soviets, and it turned out there was some villain that was playing one side off against the other?
Bad News Day.
The best Bond film of all time. Why didn't they go for Roger Spottiswoode?
I do.
It was available.
No, it was. All right, so Danny Boyle out, but then the breaking news, I saw it via Twitter, maybe this morning, I'm not going to say it because time is immaterial on the Shires and Ireland Agenda, is that Bond 25 now has a new director, Production starts on the 4th of March next year, which isn't that far away when you think about it. Scheduled now for a Valentine's Day release in 2020. So I'm wondering if there might be some kind of significance to that.
Well, didn't you say that James Bond goes away with a lady at the end of the last film?
He does, so maybe it's all about him buying her a box of chocolates.
You say the reveal is going to be that James Bond has always been the milk tray man.
Maybe. But of the new director, who I'm going to say, am I right in saying Carey? I've never heard his name said.
I'm going to guess it's Carey, yeah, because he's a guy. Carey Joji Fukunaga.
And I am actually familiar with his work. Not True Detective, which I appreciate was a hit. And is it called Maniac, the new short series on Netflix? But Jane Eyre, the very moody and understandably bleak adaptation of Jane Eyre, starring Michael Fassbender and Mia Wasikowska.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, well done.
I have seen that, and obviously Judi Dench's in that, but she won't be in Bond 25. Spoilers,
flashbacks.
But no, actually, so interesting choice because obviously Jane Eyre isn't an action film,
isn't it? I was really expecting some wire work.
But does Carey have the chops for the job?
Well, he's got the job, so he'll have to get the chops. And I think the idea is that James Bond production teams are about the best in the business when it comes to stunt work, and he's going to have an awful lot of help behind the scenes.
Is Vic Armstrong still about? He was second unit director for a long time. Is he still doing the business?
I think so. I think it was a family company as well, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure his son has gone into said industry. So, look, I think going for a versatile director, which is what Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson have said, we have to expect that they're going to slime Danny Boyle going forward.
Consider it done.
But I think going for a risky director is actually a bad proposition.
First American director, is that right?
Lita Mahori was New Zealand, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I think it would possibly be.
Maybe first time American.
Yeah, interesting.
It's an American film anyway. I love it how they kind of spin that James Bond's a British film, but it's not, is it?
You don't buy it?
I don't buy it. Unless it's on DVD, in which case I'm there.
Would you have liked the idea of a female director? Because it was S.J. Clarkson who was one of the names that was linked with the job, obviously working on Star Trek 4 at the moment.
You know, I'm happy for a female director. I'm happy for a female villain. I just don't know how that would play out with the sheer physicality. How does that work with Bond fighting a woman? But then it
worked with Rosa Klebb.
Oh, it's true actually, with the Spike of Doom
and Xenia Onatopp.
Absolutely, and the idea of Black Bond has always been touted. We know that won't happen until at least one film after this now, because we now know Daniel Craig's in the chair, so to speak.
Yes.
Of the Aston Martin, he's still got the keys.
Although it is interesting that Kerry Fukunaga has previously worked with Idris Elba.
Ah, I see.
Yes.
So perhaps there could be some succession planning there, we think.
Yeah,
Is Elba too old? By the time this film
comes personally, out? I think so, yeah. I've always said that I think when you're looking at casting for a Bond, it should be about 32, 33. So our age.
We are absolutely available. And I had a conspiracy theory that's going to link on to our next piece of new news regarding Henry Cavill. My conspiracy theory was that he doesn't want to be Superman anymore, allegedly, maybe, possibly, was a way of freeing him up to become the next James Bond. Alas, it's happened, folks. I was wrong.
I win. I always win. Is there no one on this agenda to even challenge me?
Shires and Island agenda. Okay, so on to Superman. As Tom mentioned, Henry Cavill may well be out as the Man of Steel, but this
His
is a
choice or not.
Well, now this is a story.
He doesn't want to do it, Mike.
I
don't want to be Superman anymore.
This is a story that may actually not be a story, because there have been some further developments of a non-story variety on this one today. But last week it was the Hollywood Reporter that claimed that the British actor was parting ways, as it put it, with Warner Brothers after Man of Steel, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and Justice League. Because spoiler, he was back in Justice League as well. There had been long rumoured suggestions that he was going to be making a cameo appearance. I think there was talk today. There was only about 2 lines in
Shazam.
And if you've seen the promo material for Shazam and the trailers come out, all the Batman and Superman Easter egg references in that trailer to Batman and Superman are of the DCEU variety, so you would sort of think it would lend itself to a cameo appearance. However, turned out scheduling difficulties meant that he couldn't make that appearance in Shazam. And then last week, as I say, there were rumours that has prompted a Warner Brothers statement eventually saying that while no decisions have been made regarding any upcoming Superman films, we've always had great respect for and a great relationship with Henry Cavill, and that remains unchanged. And that was the entirety of the quote from Warner Brothers.
Which tells you everything and nothing all at once, doesn't it?
Yes, because the other suggestions that have come out are that they are working on a Supergirl film, which is scripted by Oren Uziel, the scriptwriter for Cloverfield Paradox, which doesn't exactly inspire a great deal of confidence, and that they haven't got any plans for a Superman film for a while. And today, I think I'm right in saying, TMZ...
Or tomorrow, or yesterday.
Yeah, today, generally speaking. TMZ have suggested that this is all a media fabrication, this story, and that really it's just that Warner Brothers don't have any plans for a Superman film for a while. It's not that Henry Cavill's been dropped. It is simply, we don't have any plans, therefore we don't have to cast Superman at the moment.
Yeah, and we don't have to recast Superman because... if a film comes up or something's in the pipeline, then...
it'll be up to the director that sort of said who plays Superman.
Nicolas Cage still available?
Well, he has voiced him, hasn't he? Is it Teen Titans Go?
Yeah, and you've seen the pictures.
I've seen the pictures, but that, to be fair, that was 20 odd years ago. So
he could still do it. He could still fit in the suit, I'm sure.
So what do you think? Do you think if they're going to have Superman come back, let's say in 5 years' time, in a cameo or whatever, do you think it would make sense for it to be Henry Cavill with 40 then?
No, I think personally, I know it was kind of canned, the idea of Flashpoint. It was going to be a Flashpoint film, then it was going to be a Flash film, and I don't even know where that is in the kind of process now. But I think that's the way to go. I just think have Flash run really, really fast, change everything up, and pretty much start again. But at least keep what you like. I think the fans will accept that. Keep Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. Yep. That's good.
But there does seem to have been...
everything else, forget about it.
And yet there does seem to have been a public outcry, is probably not the right word, Twitter outpouring of appreciation for Henry Cavill, and then prompted a weird Instagram response from him. So could there be a case for bringing him back because fans really like him and just forget what happened?
Oh, because that's how the industry works.
Well, yeah, because ultimately it's about, as we touched on in our Oscars discussion, it's about putting bums on seats.
Remember, you are my number one agenda.
You're listening to the Shires and Ireland Agenda. Not part of this week's Big Three, but an honourable mention as Joaquin Phoenix's Joker has entered production this week, and he looks the part.
He looks, I don't want to say unsettling, but he looks...
For a killer clown?
Yeah, I was going to say, have you heard the confirmation of what his name is in the film?
Arthur. All right.
Have you got a surname as well? Because the surname is a rumour, but it does sound as though there might be something in it. Fleck.
All right.
And people have noted that if you take the first letter of Arthur and put it in front of Fleck, you get a certain name. And people are somewhat critical of Warner Brothers making a sly dig to a certain Daredevil star. So
he's Batman. So the big news of the week has to be undoubtedly the first trailer. Well, I said teaser, but it's not. It's a full trailer that has dropped for...
How long is it?
I think it's a good minute and a half.
Okay.
That has dropped for Marvel's Captain Marvel. So Brie Larson as Carol Danvers.
Carol Danvers, yeah.
A.k.a. Captain Marvel. Interesting because there's some really sweet work in the trailer, particularly because it's set in the 90s. I don't spoil too much, but Captain Marvel pretty much crash lands, falls out of the sky into a Blockbuster video store. It's not Ritz or Choices, but it's almost there. But we get a very fantastically de-aged Nick Fury and Agent Coulson.
Because I didn't think the de-aging of Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen was all that great in X-Men.
No, but
last
it's
time,
come a long way. And spoiler alert, if you've seen Ant-Man and the Wasp, some wonderful work done there with Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Douglas.
Okay.
We get shots of Ronan the Destroyer, who you know is the villain from the original Guardians of the Galaxy, because he's one of the big bads in the film. Jude Law with some funny eyes. And other than that, a confusing story. Because
from what I've heard about it and from the pictures I've seen, and the reason Tom is explaining it to me as much as to anyone else is that I haven't watched it yet, because I don't want to be visually spoiled. Look, I'm a DC person, so for me it just sounds very sort of Green Lantern. And is there always a danger when you're taking one character, because I'm assuming a lot of it takes place off-world?
Surprisingly, I think most of the trailer seems to be kind of earthbound. There's this narration that goes over it, that Carol Danvers is saying that she's having flashbacks almost to some kind of other life. So it's unclear as to whether she knows she's going to be Captain Marvel way ahead of time, or... Yeah, there was something very puzzling about the whole kind of narrative structure of when she becomes Captain Marvel in relation to her youth and so on.
I was going to say, this is one of those things where if it was a Warner Brothers and DC film, you'd sort of say this is a hard sell. But the fact that you're 20 films into the Marvel series now, and also particularly where it's placed in between the two Infinity War parts, in effect.
And a certain silver pager that you may or may not be aware of.
That people are...
It's in the trailer, by the way.
That people are going to buy it. People are going to go, well, I need to see this one because it's all building up to next year's.
It is, and I think it's already better than Green Lantern, so we don't have to worry about that. Interesting, a colleague this week say that, I just feel like it's an excuse, and a female colleague I might add, just an excuse to have another female lead. As in she almost feels overrepresented already. I was like, is that possible? Katniss Everdeen, Rey from Star Wars, Wonder Woman, Captain Marvel.
It's too many.
It's too much. Of course it's not.
I can almost list them on more than one hand.
Tells you everything you need to know. But do check out that trailer. It is well worth a watch. And there's loads of high-res images on various websites that you can...
To do with the film.
To do with the film. You naughty boy.
When you're after agenda, don't talk.
You're listening to the Shires and Island Agenda. That is it for this first edition of the Shires and Island Agenda. We'll be back next week with more of the same but different. But until then, take care. Ta-ra now.
Bye, everybody.